Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is Anonymous Addiction. And Anonymous Addiction is international. Of course, this is, we're on the internet. It's world. So we could call it Anonymous Addiction International, right? Don't forget to subscribe. This is Bobby C. I'll be your host. And on Facebook, Anonymous Addiction, My Truth About AA, as Bobby C. sees it. I met Ross. He actually, I've only met him about a week ago, but we've been DMing each other, talking to each other. And he's a real down to earth guy. And that's what I like on my podcast. I like regular down to earth human beings. Okay. We're professionals in our life journey. We're not this quote professional where we studied and somebody told us what to think. We are professionals of our own journey and our own life. So I'm going to let Ross, he's from the UK, okay? And Ross is going to tell us a little bit about himself and tell us a little about the UK. Welcome, Ross.
Welcome, Bobby. Very good to see you. And thanks for giving me this opportunity to come on your podcast. Really, why I've come on the podcast is to just tell my experience of what it was like in Alcoholics Anonymous and how life began and how I came into Alcoholics Anonymous. Obviously, I'm from the UK. I'm from England, which is made up of England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. And I'm from a place called Birmingham, which is right in the middle of England. It's central England, and I live in it's a city and suburb areas around it. I was from a working class background. Drinking was normal in my family because we were all working class and you kind of did a hard day's work. So you went drinking after that. That's the way I was brought up. I was brought up in a public house, a bar, or pub, we call them pubs here. And I left school at 16 to get an apprenticeship in security systems and stuff like that, and quite quickly drinking was something I did on weekends with my friends. And after I started experiencing these things called blackouts, and I would just drink, and then parts of the night I wouldn't remember. I'd wake up in bed and wouldn't remember getting home or nothing like that. But the circle of friends I was doing, we were all getting drunk, so I didn't feel like the odd one out or anything like that. And then I started getting in trouble, getting bits of police stations, and it started affecting my employment, personal relationships, in my family relationships, and this just carried on till I was about 32, and I decided to do something about it because it was suggested by my mother that a family friend had joined Alcoholics Anonymous, and she told her that I suggest that I should try Alcoholics Anonymous. That's how I came about Alcoholics Anonymous, because I didn't know anything at all about Alcoholics Anonymous. And the first contact for me was through the helpline, and they suggested to go to a meeting. But the first thing which really made me convince me that I might be a so-called alcoholic, the label, was I answered these questions, which is on the website. And I only had to get 4 or more yeses out of 12 to convince me that I'm an alcoholic. So I went to my first meeting, and I've never experienced friendliness like it. It was, these people were so friendly to me, and they were sharing their stories back to me. And I can't remember if it was about 15, 20 people in this room. And I started to identify with people's stories, which convinced me that I am like these people. So I walked out the meeting. Now I'm thinking I've got an answer to my problem about my drinking. I'm an alcoholic, so I just stuck a label on myself. So then I started attending AA. And really looking back, that's where the indoctrination started for me. I was going out to meetings every day because I was advised meetings in 90 days. one a day. That's what I was told. And that's come over from America, I think, but they've took it on in the UK. That's the standard protocol when you come to AA. Do a meeting every day, or as many as you can. And there was times when I was doing one on the morning, one on night time, twice a day. So sometimes on a Saturday I'd do 3. And then quite quickly I was persuaded to buy the book, the big book, to sell the AA literature, which in my head now is merchandise. And I was quite quickly told to get a sponsor. So I did these things because not that I believed in the AA belief system about the 12 steps. It was more I wanted to fit in, part of the crowd. So I did that, and then I drank after 3 months. And it was one night of drinking. I went into blackout. I must have contacted somebody on AA because they were all contacting me. And I came back to AA quite quickly. And then I carried on like that, drank again after 3 months. But I come back quite quick. And this was the story for 4 years. I was doing that, I was getting a sponsor. And then I left after 4 years. For about 4 years, I think it was. It kind of drifted out of my mind, but it was still always there in the back of my mind. So then I came back and I did the same thing. I got a sponsor and attempted these steps, and I seemed to be doing okay. I thought, I'm happy not drinking. But then after 12 months, 13 months, I started to not feel the same in Alcoholics Anonymous. So I decided to take it. I left, and then I drifted away for 18 months, 2 years, and then I came back again. But this time, I made a decision that I've come to the end of the line with it. There's only AA can save me. There's nothing else out there, so I need to come back. And this time, I need to be rigorously honest. That's where I went wrong. I wasn't honest enough on them steps. So that's where I must have failed. So I got a sponsor. As far as I'm concerned, I went through them steps as rigorously honest, and I went through really quick, and I started doing more service. There's 2 reasons service. I was encouraged, plus feeds me ego, makes me feel good that I'm important. And then I did more service, doing more meetings, and I was at work. So when I finished, I go to a meeting on that, and then I'm doing more AA, getting involved, and then I was encouraged to sponsor. I started sponsoring. So my whole time now is starting to. It was consuming me with AA. Most days I was encouraged to speak to an alcoholic every day, at least one. So to keep that contact with AA. And I was also encouraged to always keep one service position or more at every given time through your whole AA life. And the reason is that for me is, if I've still got one service position, it's harder for me to leave AA. That's how I see it. And so I started doing service, and I remember going on the phone service, doing the helpline. And I wasn't talking to, I was talking to my family, but I started to feel that I wasn't in part of society, really. I was kind of in this AA bubble. I was socialising with AAs, seeing AAs in meeting. I was on the phone to Alcoholics Anonymous members. And I just started to get claustrophobic of AA. It was cocooning me, and I just started to feel very isolated. I mean, when I was at work, I didn't socialise before. It was all AA. I didn't realise that indoctrination was going in me, because it's so much repetition in Alcoholics Anonymous. And on the morning, I was doing the prayers, I was doing the daily readings, AA literature I'm reading, so I'm getting the books for the AA going in. I'm getting the phone chats with all my members. And what I noticed was some members were more indoctrinated than others. Some, they couldn't talk anything but AA. Because I never realised over time you start learning the AA language, and it definitely started to indoctrinate me. And when I was quite I used to go to big book meetings, step and tradition meetings, as Bill sees it meetings. And I was with really, my circle of people in AA was with people who stick with the winners, as I say, the ones who conform to the AA belief system. Because, and I always ask the question in AA, why is it the non-steppers remain abstinent, longevity as well, and why is the reason that they haven't worked the steps, the belief system, they haven't done it, the ideology of AA, yet they remain sober? How is that possible? And they basically said to me that they're probably not a real alcoholic, they're probably a heavy drinker. And then I was like, that don't seem right. You've kind of stuck a label on them now, they're heavy drinkers. And it's like, they got an answer for everything. They got an answer for everything, but they haven't got really an answer for anything at all. And whenever I was not well, I was always told, up your meetings, speak to your spontaneous. And if I hadn't been to a meeting for a few days, they'd be on the phone. And I felt totally overwhelmed by it. And then probably I left AA about 5 weeks ago, and about 3 months previous to that, I started, the indoctrination wasn't really going in anymore. I started not to believe what was going on in the meetings, didn't believe the disease concept. And I even started to doubt in this thing we call untreated alcoholism. If you don't treat the alcoholism with a 12-step program, you know, you're going to drink. And I was told you will sign your own death warrants if you don't conform to the 12-step program. That's what I was told. I was always told service will keep you sober, all these kind of things. And, you know, and put running fear into me that if I ever do leave AA, my life is doomed. And that's what I was told. And, you know, and I've shared, when I was indoctrinated properly, I was sharing that I owe my whole life to AA and God. And I heard other people share it. That's exactly what I was doing. And when a newcomer, I'd encourage them to buy the book, which I just class as AA merchandise. And I don't call them newcomers now, they're recruits. Once I'd sort of gone through the steps and up to step 12, it's my job now to sponsor and do the same thing that's been done before and before from my sponsor. And I started to become disillusioned with AA, and I didn't look at any other stuff while I was still in AA. And for 3 months, I was just starting to drift away. I wasn't answering the phone as much. And then I decided to take a drink, and I knew in the back of my mind, one, that in AA, if you drink, even if you have 2 sips of alcohol intentionally, you're stripped of all your service positions. And that always wondered that if somebody's got 10 years of sobriety, yet they go for a drink and they drink some of it, then they change their mind to make a mistake, they're still stripped of their sobriety. And that to me is a punishment. And you go back to step 1, you have to start the steps again. And to me, it's like a punishing method. And I didn't agree with that. And I drank, and within an hour of drinking, I'd already decided to send the message that I'm dropping my service, I've drank, because I knew that that's me, kind of my escape out. And I was getting messages, next day I was getting loads of messages, keep coming back. And in AA, they say, keep repeating the same thing over and over again to get a different sort of insanity. So my reply was, after 13 years of trying the same thing over and over again, it would be insane of me not to try something new. And then they basically stopped replying as much. And I only give them their answer, what they say to me. So that was and then I came on to your groups at first, the other groups in, I think, Orange Papers and Leaving AA, Deprogramming from AA, and You On The Truth, I can't remember what the name is probably, but and then I started watching your videos, and there was the lady who was the CrossFit lady. She's been for 20 years, I can't remember now, watched it last week, I think. And everything she was saying I experienced it myself. I was that indoctrinated, the dogmatic views, and that's what I was experiencing, the same thing. And this has really helped me, the groups, because I went to try a smart meeting recently, a couple of smart meetings, but my head was still thinking I'm still in an AA meeting. But I have to remember, other recovery, I don't know what the word, ways or other recovery ideas, they're not AA, so they've got their own style. So I have to remember that when you've been in for so long on and off, you kind of think the same. So it takes a while not to think like that. So I became very disillusioned with it, and then I started to think I never really believed the disease concept. I've even looked up untreated alcoholism. Does that even exist? Does alcoholism even exist, the illness? And I don't think it does now. So I was very bitter coming out for a month, quite angry feeling towards Alcoholics Anonymous, and that's simmered down a lot now. You know, I've definitely calmed down. And I was speaking to somebody this morning he's in and out the rooms really, and he asked me when I'd last had a drink, and I said my reply was, I'm not counting days. I'm not trying to achieve sobriety. I'm not trying to achieve recovery. I'm not trying to do anything. I'm not an alcoholic. You know, they put that label on me, not me. And I always wondered that if I did go to a meeting with a drink problem anyway, I'm going to identify with somebody's story in the rooms. At least if there's 20, I'm going to identify with some of them. That was the convinced. That's how they got me. I always taught me to be open-minded. It made me close-minded. Only open-minded to believe the AA belief system, their ideology. And that's what I become, closed-minded, and I became ostracized from society, really. You know, and I can see it's no different to me than going to a Catholic church, a Christian church. It's exactly the same. And I was looking this morning at loaded language. AA uses loaded language. You know, it has emotional impact with the wording and stuff. And, you know, there's all slogans around the room. It's all penetrating into your mind. You know, when I was getting phone calls with AAs, reading the literature, it's absorbing just to indoctrinate me. You know, and I do believe now that if somebody makes a decision to go and get help to stop the drinking, they've already made the decision, they want to do something about the drinking, but they're coming to AA and then they may remain absent for the rest of their life. AA will take all the credit for that because you would think it's AA doing it. So to me, that's how the placebo effect works. And
Ross, let me jump in there. You touched on so many things that, you know, I've talked about in so many podcasts that I have done. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a deprogramming podcast, just to let you know. We're deprogramming from Alcoholics Anonymous, and we're going to freedom and the freedom to create our own programs. And that's what Ross is talking about, creating our own programs and having the freedom, finally breaking away from the pyramid of Alcoholics Anonymous, the indoctrination, the propaganda, the coercive persuasion, getting the messages through osmosisly, having ambivalence and cognitive dissonance all the time. So Ross he's got the courage to come on this podcast and tell the audience. Now, he mentioned that Robin, he was listening to one of Robbie's podcasts and she helped him a little bit. Somebody's going to listen to Ross and he's going to help somebody. What we're doing, ladies and gentlemen, is we're deprogramming one member at a time. We're doing it from the inside out. I'm going to ask you a question, Ross. Does your government kind of promote Alcoholics Anonymous?
No, it's still attraction before promotion.
Now, does your government like kind of send you? No, it doesn't send you into Alcoholics Anonymous.
If you go to your local doctor, your doctor may know somebody in AA, or he will recommend you, but it's more the other government funded services. There is other government funded ones because AA is so closed off from or affiliated to organisations. It's pretty much to promote themselves.
Does the government organizations promote Alcoholics Anonymous? Do they send
Not far as I
you?
know.
No. Okay. And here in the United States, we get court order people to Alcoholics Anonymous from the courts. That's the government, and around here, the doctors, all the therapists, all the so-called professionals that study this disease concept, they're being indoctrinated themselves. They're being fed propaganda. So they're going to colleges and schools and getting educated about this disease concept that's been put onto society as truth, which we know is not. Let me ask you something. You mentioned something about you found out that actually it's almost like a placebo effect. It's not almost, it is. I get people, they get pissed off at me lately and they say, Bobby, I'm getting tired of you bad mouthing Alcoholics Anonymous. AA and NA and the 12 steps saved my life. And you mentioned that, and I love that because you know what? Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, 12-step group, and matter of fact, anybody else does not save your life. You save your own life and you give the credit. So the whole system is set up for people to be through guilt, shame, and fear, and through the dedication, because you mentioned it's like the Catholic Church, and it is. It's so connected to the Catholic Church and all the saints. It's so connected to the religions and the Catholic Church, especially the Catholic Church, that they want you to devote your life. It's all about trusted servants and devotion. It's just like Matt Talbot devoted his whole life. He's going to be the patronage saint of the alcoholism, the disease. They're trying to canonize Matt Talbot, which they will eventually through the Matt Talbot retreats. But people say, Bobby, you piss. I don't piss nobody off. They piss themselves off because they're taking this so personal. They're taking like, I am responsible to protect Alcoholics Anonymous because they have saved my life. Because without AA, NA, or 12 steps or any of these other programs, I will be dead, in jail, or in an institution. And it says it right there. So through fear, guilt, and shame, that they're brainwashed into thinking that their devotion has to be, they have to defend it constantly with no critical outside thinking, unless, and if they don't protect Alcoholics Anonymous through the steps and traditions, that they're doomed. What do you think about that, Ross?
The tradition, I don't know if it's tradition 10, where they have no opinion on outside interests. That clearly states. It's very clever to keep people out, and you can be pulled up in AA for talking about outside interests. It's not allowed in the meeting. They're quite rigid with it.
Exactly. I just did the podcast on Tradition 10. Ladies and gentlemen, you can check that out. Tradition 10, what Ross just mentioned. Yes, no opinion on outside issues. Please don't talk about nobody, nothing else. And don't ever tell anybody else to go to a different program. How many times, Ross, were you mentioned Smart Recovery, Recovery Dharma, or any other harm reduction or Sinclair method? Were they, anybody ever tell you that in Alcoholics Anonymous?
No, even from my own point of view, when I was indoctrinated, it was, if somebody did mention it, I wouldn't carry on the conversation. I would dismiss it as though AA is the only true way. There's nothing else, so I wouldn't engage in it too much. But since recently, I've been doing a lot of reading about the Sinclair method.
Yes.
They just will not accept anything but alcoholics, 12-step program.
Right. Now, next podcast, I'm going to be doing Tradition 11. Now, let me state Tradition 11 is our relations with the general public should be characterized by personal anonymity. We think AA ought to avoid sensational advertising. Our names and pictures as AA members ought not be broadcast. filmed, or publicly printed. Our relation policy should be guided by the principle of attraction rather than promotion. There is never need to praise ourselves. Is that a bunch of BS? We should never be able to praise ourselves. That's all we do. That's all they teach you to do in Alcoholics Anonymous is praise yourself every day. Oh, I got 2 days, 5 days, 10 days, 30 days, 50 days. Oh, look at me. I'm clean and sober. I'm clean and sober. Please look what I've done. When actually we're just doing what is natural. You know, hey, we can't drink or, you know, we had problematic drinking and drugging. Now we don't. So we're supposed to pat ourselves on the back all day long for doing something that we're just doing for our own health and safety.
I think collecting the coins, because I know in Robin says in Canada it's every 5 years. Here in the UK, you get monthlies to 12 months, 18-month chip, 2 years, and then yearly after. But the more chips you get, the bigger you blow up, you know, and you start sponsoring more people. It feeds the ego. Hey, look at me, I'm helping all these people. It definitely feeds the ego. And once you take the days away, you're not achieving. And the one thing I want to mention is when you relapse, well, I'm going to say lapse, if you come back straight away, there is a difference between the two, that you will come back traumatized. I have seen people crying in them rooms, and me myself have lapsed and come back, and I've walked through them rooms, stripped of service, and I've felt like I've killed somebody, and I've had a drink. And when I've been out of the not in AA, and I'm in the same situation, the guilt and remorse is not there. It's only when I'm in the rooms, because you're made to feel like that.
It's almost like they hijacked time in itself. So they give us these coins to bond us. They bond us. They bound us. We're actually in bondage to AA. You know, they talk about self-bondage. We're actually have bondage to AA. We become slaves to the AA thinking because of these coins given out. And here they got a thing on time. Look, what have you lost? What has anybody lost? They go out and have they like to call it relapse. They have a relapse a month ago. They go back in the rooms. They're stripped of all their coins. They start now zero. Oh, you got 1 day now. Oh, let's raise your hand. Who has 1 day? Oh, I used to have 5 years, but now I got 1 day. How in the hell is it possible to strip your past away from you? Because it's all knowledge, information, and experience. It's our life journey. That's how we learn. So they're stripping that away from us like that. That's meaningless. All the stuff that we accomplished and learned, and all the information that we gathered in our mind, it's still there. You didn't lose nothing,
you haven't lost it.
You didn't lose nothing, ladies and gentlemen.
No. And when I know you have to go back to the starting point, I take you back starting, you go back to step one. In my point of view, what am I going to learn new going through? I've gone through. I know what they are. There's going to be no new experience or no learning tool from it. So it's a pointless exercise. It's just to make you feel worse than what you are. And they're very good at that.
They're very, you know, these podcasts aren't against the people. These podcasts, me and Ross ain't here to badmouth the members. Even though there's a lot of assholes in Alcoholics Anonymous, we know that, but there's a lot of assholes in every damn program there is. Doesn't matter, okay? We're here to expose, we're here to uncover, recover, and discover the truth that we've discovered through our experience in this indoctrination cult mentality system. So we're here 1 day at a time to try to show somebody else, maybe just coming in for the first day, maybe coming out of a detox and going into a treatment center, because the treatment centers all force people into, they force people into Alcoholics Anonymous. Alcoholics Anonymous doesn't have to promote shit because everybody else is promoting it from the outside, because society believes in this triangle, and it's the only, they're saying it's the only cure. So they're sending everybody from the doctors, nurses, psychiatrists, court systems, government, religion, Hollywood, media. They're all infiltrating because it's the warehouse. It's a warehouse of recovery, because they act like we're the low of the low life, and we're going to send you over here to Alcoholics Anonymous.
I mean, even in the UK, most of the treatments are 12-step treatment centres. It's got the monopoly all over the world for 12 steps, hasn't it?
All over the world.
You need to figure that 90% of the treatment centres are all 12 steps.
Right over UK and UK, yeah. See,
Yeah.
So, like I said, this is Anonymous Addiction International, okay? Because we're talking to the world. We're not talking. And you know what? Yes, we're breaking the 11th tradition. I am, and so is Ross, and we're proud to do it because we're speaking out. We're done being controlled and manipulated by Alcoholics Anonymous programming. We're deprogramming from the programming that we've got for so many years. And this is about creating our own programs, our own life journeys. You know, Ross and I believe in abstinence, but you know, we look, if you choose moderation, whatever, we're not prohibitionist. I personally believe in abstinence. That doesn't mean that I don't respect other people's choices. Okay, I'm not a prohibitionist, but I'll tell you one thing. Alcohol industry, pharmaceutical industry, and the tobacco industry is not your friend. It's not your friend. They love for you to get all whacked out. They want you to dumb you down. Okay. They want to make you a victim. They want to create you addicted to their product so they can keep you from coming back, you know, keep you coming back. It's just like Alcoholics Anonymous, the same thing. They got the carrot and the stick. They got the carrot and the stick to keep you coming back. I don't care what it was, through their advertising mechanisms. Advertising is repetition. You know, repetition is the mother of brainwashing, and it's also the mother of skill too. But repetition through slogans, through sayings, through books, through readings, through prayers, over and over again. And Ross was talking about that earlier. Back to you, Ross.
Yeah, the repetition, and you know, that starts happening as soon as you enter AA, the repetition, and that's why you're encouraged to speak on the phone regularly, go to regular meetings, read the literature, do the prayers. It's all out, it's AA prayers because you're getting the prayers from the literature. You got the step prayers, so you're absorbed and it's strip fed into you, and then it's so subtle you don't even know it's happening to you. You don't even know you're indoctrinated. That's the power of it, really. And people don't even ever have ever think of looking at someone else or leaving. They're in there till their day they die. And you're so brainwashed that to think that there's another way. I mean, even you can't get through life with a sponsor. That's, to me, ludicrous. I can't get through life with Alcoholics Anonymous. And you're that brainwashed to become reliant on Alcoholics Anonymous. That's why you become reliant on them, just to live a life. You can't be happy without them. This is instilled into you. And when I originally first went to Alcoholics Anonymous to see something about my drinking problem, I didn't realise what I was getting, because when you first go there, you don't know. And that's how it's clever with the indoctrination. It's like hidden in a way. And then they're indoctrinating you without you realising. They're really programming it. But if you don't conform in AA, the people in there are cast aside, in my eyes. You've got the ones who conform to the system, the ones that don't. And there's a hierarchy, really.
Yes, and I always say this. Some people don't understand it, but it's the controlling minority. It's the controlling minority in a group that controls the agenda, the message, the programming, and they have millions of. When I say minority, people think it's not a lot of people. The silent majority they're coming into Alcoholics Anonymous. They're going out. They're coming in. They're doing some steps. They're getting some sponsors. They're not big book thumpers. They're not steppers, but they're still being, like you said, they're still being programmed subliminally, osmosisly, slowly, gradually. They're getting indoctrinated whether they like it or not. They think they're not, and they keep on coming back. They keep on coming back, and they fully believe sooner or later they probably believe it now, that they have a disease, they're powerless. Alcoholics Anonymous can save their lives, and they have to go to meetings for life and recruit others for life. Ladies and gentlemen, next podcast, we're going to talk about, me and Ross are going to get together and talk about, people say alcohol doesn't have power. Drink a pint of whiskey and see how much power it's got. When you stick it in your mouth, it's got a bunch of power. Okay. Now, when we don't stick it in our mouth, I mean, if you have a drink or two, yes, you got power. But if you drink a lot of drinks, it's got power. Once it takes over you, it takes over your body, mind, and spirit. Okay. And Ross and me are going to get together next podcast, and we're going to talk about blackout drinking. Okay, a lot of people don't talk about that. They think, oh, it's not real. I'm going to talk about blackout drinkers, because not all of us black out when we drink heavily, and a lot of us too. So I want Ross to come back and give us some of his ideas, and maybe before he comes back, he can do a little bit of studying about the medical aspect of blackout drinking. But that's some real stuff, I mean, that's one good damn reason, because I always say, look, we broke a habitual habit. I stopped the habit. That doesn't mean that if I started moderation, I could, even if I'm smart, even if I'm aware and conscious of stuff, that doesn't mean if I start moderating, doesn't mean that I cannot become habitually addicted again. Okay, so just think of that. And another thing I wanted to say on this podcast, listen to this, ladies and gentlemen. Alcoholics Anonymous says it's the cure. It's the cure for this disease, and I owe my life to Alcoholics Anonymous. People say this all the time. I must be devoted, because they saved my life, so I owe them. I owe them my will and my life. I owe them that. Now, they say that's a cure for a disease. This is what I say. You know what a real cure is? Insulin for a diabetic. That's a real cure, okay? I could see people being grateful for that. Insulin, say, I have a grandson that's has a type 1. He's type 1 diabetic. That's not who he is. It's just something he has. But I'll tell you what, that helps him save his life. Okay. Heart surgeons, when a heart surgeon performs surgery, they could save your life. But saying Alcoholics Anonymous, the 12-step program, and all these other programs save your life, take credit. Be responsible. Take credit for your own life. It was you that did it. No one else did it but you. Take some credit. What do you want to leave the audience with today, Ross? Tell maybe some newcomers, or not newcomers, but new people that are coming in. Give them a little bit of your wisdom that you've learned.
Do your research on other recovery ideas, and if you are presently in Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous or any of the 12 steps programs, if you're feeling how I felt, don't not have the courage to leave. Just leave when you want to. You don't owe them anything. You can walk out anytime. If you're feeling really difficult to get out because of you're psychologically stuck there, you feel afraid to leave, just leave, because it will set you free, really. Because since I left, the freedom that I feel, it was like an escape from a prison. Do not be scared to leave. And I'm still here. I haven't been sentenced to death. I'm still here. And I know a lot of other people who've left Alcoholics years ago, and they're still not drinking. They're still abstinent. So it's a complete fraud. What is in that book, you don't believe it because it's not true. Don't be scared to leave. Just have the courage to go if that's what you're feeling. You're feeling like how I felt. It's entirely up to you. And look at other things. Don't be closed-minded that AA or NA as the only answer.
Right.
That's really what I've got to say.
Thanks, Ross. I appreciate that. You know what? We're going to come back on and we'll share again. And, ladies and gentlemen, listen, come on the podcast, speak out, come on this podcast, because your voice, when you speak out, you let this energy and all this negativity and all this stuff that's inside of you, you let it out. Okay. And you let it out into the universe. Okay. You're helping somebody, but you're helping yourself when you come on a podcast and talk like this and talk about this stuff. Ross, I know, is going to feel a lot better after this podcast done. He's going to check it out. He's going to check out his podcast, and he's going to do some improvement too. He's going to say, "Hey, I'm going to change this. I may get this. I'm going to change the lighting," because next time he comes on there, we want to be able to get to the audience the best we can. And Ross, I appreciate you being on from the UK, United Kingdom. And I think I think that's Birmingham. What town?
Yeah.
Birmingham.
Yeah.
Birmingham. So, ladies and gentlemen, take care. Don't forget to subscribe to Anonymous Addiction Deprogramming podcast. And really, this is it's changing. Alcoholics Anonymous. Anonymous Addiction to Freedom without labels. Actually, we're going to go from, as Bobby C sees it, AA, my truth about AA, to my truth about life, because this is what this thing's all about. Recovery is about living a life, going out there in society and having a good time. Be safe, healthy. Everybody take care, and we'll see you on the next podcast. Thank you, Ross. I appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.